Hollywood dazzles with bright lights and endless glamour, but behind the curtain lies a darker truth. Fates so shocking, so heartbreaking, that no script could have ever written them. Stars who seemed untouchable were taken in ways no one could have predicted. Freak accidents, unexplained mysteries, and tragedies born from the very tools meant to entertain us. These are not just endings. They are chilling reminders of how fragile life can be, even for those who seemed destined for immortality. 1. Brandon Lee, the Crow, and a fatal prop gun. Brandon Lee, the only son of martial arts legend Bruce Lee, was more than an heir to a famous name. With raw charisma, undeniable talent, and a magnetic screen presence, he was carving out a legacy all his own. His moment was finally here with The Crow, a film that was set to launch him into superstardom. But on March 31st, 1993, destiny turned cruel. During the filming of a pivotal scene, a prop gun was fired at Brandon. What should have been harmless became fatal. A fragment from a dummy round, left lodged in the barrel from earlier mishandling, was propelled into his abdomen. Brandon collapsed on set, never to rise again. Despite hours of surgery, he was pronounced dead at just 28 years old. The tragedy echoed through Hollywood. His co-stars were shattered, the crew devastated, and audiences stunned that such a preventable mistake could claim a life. The Crow was completed using stand-ins and digital effects, transforming the film into a haunting tribute. What was meant to be his breakout role instead became his gravestone on celluloid, a chilling prophecy of a man avenging his own death. Brandon Lee was on the brink of greatness, and in an instant, it was stolen. Anton Yelchin, crushed by a defect. Anton Yelchin was one of Hollywood's brightest young talents, a rare blend of sensitivity and brilliance. From the raw grit of Alpha Dog to the unforgettable Chekhov in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek reboot, he wasn't chasing fame. Fame was chasing him. Quiet, thoughtful, and fiercely intelligent, Anton carried a spark that promised decades of unforgettable performances. But on a quiet June morning in 2016, fate betrayed him in the cruelest way. At just 27 years old, Anton pulled into the steep driveway of his Los Angeles home. He stepped out briefly to check his mail, believing his Jeep Grand Cherokee was safely in park. It wasn't. The SUV rolled backward, pinning him against a brick pillar and metal gate. By the time he was found, it was too late. The horror deepened when investigators revealed the car had a known defect. Its electronic shifter often misled drivers into thinking the vehicle was in park. It was a flaw so serious that the model was already under recall. Anton's death wasn't the result of reckless choices or a fast lifestyle. He wasn't speeding, he wasn't drinking, he wasn't careless. He was simply checking the mail. And yet, Hollywood lost a rising star whose light had only just begun to shine. 3. Anne Heche, a fiery end to a stormy life. Anne Heche lived like a whirlwind, brilliant, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. She was the adventurous blonde opposite Harrison Ford in 6 Days, 7 Nights, the groundbreaking partner of Ellen DeGeneres, and a performer who poured both chaos and vulnerability into every role. Her life was turbulent, scarred by childhood abuse and past struggles with drugs, yet fueled by an unrelenting fire to keep moving forward. But no one could have predicted the way she would leave this world. On August 5th, 2022, Anne was driving her Mini Cooper through a quiet Los Angeles neighborhood when disaster struck. She lost control of the car, slamming into a house. Moments later, the vehicle erupted in flames. Firefighters battled the inferno for over 20 minutes before they could even reach her. Anne survived the initial crash but suffered devastating injuries. For 6 days, the world watched as she clung to life in a hospital bed. On August 11th, she was gone. Rumors swirled of drugs and alcohol, but toxicology reports revealed none. It was simply a freak accident, violent, unexplained, and merciless. In death, as in life, Anne Heche defied easy explanations. She was fragile yet unbreakable, broken yet blazing with talent. Her final chapter was written in fire, a tragic end to a woman who had lived every moment with intensity and without breaks. 4. Natalie Wood. A mystery beneath dark waters. Natalie Wood was Hollywood royalty from the time she was a child, the sweet little girl in Miracle on 34th Street, the luminous Maria in West Side Story. She grew into a star who seemed untouchable, adored for both her beauty and her depth. But behind the gowns and red carpets, Natalie's life carried a quiet storm. On the night of November 28, 1981, she boarded a yacht off Catalina Island with her husband, actor Robert Wagner, and her co-star Christopher Walken. The evening was fueled by drinks, arguments, and tension. By morning, Natalie was gone. Her body was discovered floating in the water a mile from the boat. She wore a nightgown, socks, and a life jacket. Authorities first ruled it an accident, claiming she slipped while trying to secure a loose dinghy. But whispers grew louder, bruises on her body, the bitter argument, a timeline that didn't quite fit. In 2011, investigators reopened the case, and years later, Robert Wagner was named a person of interest. He denied any wrongdoing, but suspicion has never left. Decades later, Natalie Wood's death remains one of Hollywood's most haunting cold cases. A woman who spent her life in the spotlight met her end in darkness, swallowed by the ocean, leaving behind a question that still lingers. What really happened that night on the yacht? From Vic Morrow, a nightmare on the set of Twilight Zone. Vic Morrow was a veteran actor whose rugged intensity made him unforgettable. From war dramas to gritty roles, he brought authenticity to every performance. By the early 1980s, his career was finding new life with a role in Twilight Zone, the movie, a comeback chance that seemed destined to restore his stardom. But on the night of July 23, 1982, fiction and reality collided in the most horrifying way. In a climactic scene, Morrow's character was carrying two young children through a Vietnam War nightmare. Explosions lit up the sky while a helicopter hovered dangerously above. Suddenly, a special effects blast ripped through the air, destroying the helicopter's tail rotor. In seconds, the aircraft spiraled out of control and came crashing down on Morrow and the two children, ages 6 and 7. All three were killed instantly. Hollywood was shaken to its core. For the first time in history, a director, John Landis, along with several crew members, faced involuntary manslaughter charges. Though they were eventually acquitted, the damage could never be undone. Vic Morrow didn't die in a hospital bed or from natural causes. He died screaming, holding children in his arms beneath a falling helicopter. The scene was cut from the final film, but the tragedy still hangs over Hollywood like smoke, a brutal reminder that even movie magic comes with a deadly cost. 6. John Eric Hexum, a deadly joke with a prop gun. John Eric Hexum seemed to have it all: movie star looks, irresistible charm, and a promising role in the television series Cover Up. A former model and Green Beret, he was the kind of rising talent casting directors fought over. On screen and off, he was magnetic, funny, and full of life. He wasn't just on his way to stardom, he was already there. But in October 1984, a single impulsive moment ended everything. While waiting on set during a delay in filming, Hexum grew frustrated. To pass the time, he picked up a prop gun, pressed it playfully to his head, and pulled the trigger. Everyone thought it was a harmless joke, but blanks aren't harmless. The explosive force fractured his skull, driving a piece of bone into his brain. He collapsed instantly and never regained consciousness. After 6 days in a coma, his family made the painful decision to remove life support. He was only 26 years old. The tragedy stunned Hollywood, not just because of its senselessness, but because it could have been avoided so easily. Yet even in death, Hexum's story carried a strange light. As an organ donor, he gave life to others, his heart, kidneys, and corneas saving and transforming lives across the country. John Eric Hexum died because of a moment meant as a joke, but in the end, he was still a hero. 7. William Holden, a Hollywood icon. Silenced in solitude, William Holden was more than just a leading man. He was Hollywood royalty. From Sunset Boulevard to Network, his rugged charm and brooding intensity made him one of the most captivating stars of his generation. He embodied the golden age of cinema, a symbol of strength and sophistication on screen. But away from the spotlight, Holden lived a very different life. He was fiercely private, a heavy drinker, and someone who valued solitude above all else. And it was that very solitude that led to his shocking end. In November 1981, Holden was alone in his Los Angeles apartment, drinking as he often did. At some point, he slipped on a rug and struck his head on a nightstand. The wound didn't look catastrophic, but it was enough. He tried to stop the bleeding with tissues, then stumbled into bed, never realizing how grave the injury was. He passed out and never woke up. By the time he was discovered, it was too late. The coroner revealed he had bled to death from a small but lethal cut. Tragically, he may have lived for half an hour after the fall, time enough to call for help, had anyone been there. William Holden survived Hollywood's scandals, reinventions, and decades under the spotlight. Yet, in the end, he died quietly, alone in the dark, undone by something as ordinary as a slip and as merciless as silence. From Brandon Lee's haunting end on the set of The Crow to William Holden's quiet death in solitude, these tragedies remind us that even the brightest stars can be taken by the smallest twist of fate. They weren't reckless thrill-seekers chasing danger. They were actors, storytellers, and icons whose lives ended in ways no one could have imagined. Hollywood sells us the dream of immortality, but these stories reveal the truth. Fame doesn't shield anyone from tragedy. A faulty car, a burning home, a sudden fall, each one left behind shattered families, unfinished stories, and fans who still grieve decades later. But their legacies endure. Their films, their voices, and their moments on screen continue to inspire. In remembering them, we honor more than their deaths. We celebrate their lives, their artistry, and the echoes they left behind. If these stories moved you, don't let them fade. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us which of these stars left the deepest mark on you, and subscribe for more untold stories from Hollywood's hidden side. Because behind every spotlight is a shadow, and sometimes the shadow tells the most unforgettable story.